Hi, this is Matt with Preferati, and we're here to help you find success working in the US. Today we're talking about the concept of hand-holding. What does it mean, and why can it sink your US career? So I have heard a lot of companies from the US complain over the years about working with offshore staff, and one of the most frequent is some version of, I have to do too much hand-holding. That's what they say. They said, I had to do too much hand-holding. I had to let him go. She required too much hand-holding. I couldn't work with her anymore. This is something I hear all the time, hand-holding. This is a phrase they use. I'd actually never used this phrase. The first time I heard it was from my customers, but they use it all the time. I hear it from different customers who never talk to each other. They use this phrase, hand-holding. So we have to ask ourselves, what does hand-holding mean? And so I did quite a bit of Googling and looking around, and the only real image I got was not super flattering. It's an example of a child. This kid needs some hand-holding right here to get up this log. That's really what's there. So kind of harsh, right? Ouch. Okay, so let's break this down and find out what they're talking about. So what I think what it really means is that you have to get what you need from your offshore teammate by working really, really hard. I have to put in a ton of effort to get what I need out of you as my offshore's teammate. So the client has to basically manage every detail of the process and show the offshore teammate how to do everything. The client may have to do 50, 75%, or, and I've seen this, 150% of the effort they would have had to put in to do the task themselves or to do it via a US teammate. So if you're understanding me correctly, this person is actually working harder than they would have had to do it themselves. Now, to be fair, most people, including US clients, are happy to lend a helping hand. But if your US client is overworked and they hired you to help, and getting work done through you takes as much effort or more as doing it themselves, then they're no better off. They're just not in a better position having you on the team. If they have to put in more effort to get it done through you than it would take them to do it themselves, you're not helping. Sorry. Hand-holding is fine at first during onboarding. The problem is a lot of offshore staff just never graduate past it. To find success in the US, you need to quickly recognize when your hand is being held and shift to a more proactive stance where you are taking charge and ownership of the deliverable with the client as your assistant instead of the other way around. So instead of looking at it as I'm the client's assistant, you look at it as whatever this client has given me to do, it's my job. I've got to get it done. I've got to get it done properly. And the client is my assistant. I can reach out to them for help, answer questions, things like that. But that's them helping me. I'm responsible. I own this deliverable. This really is the key difference between hand-holding and collaborating with your client. It gets more complicated because culturally, your US client is unlikely to complain about hand-holding. I hear about hand-holding a lot, but the people that we put on teams often don't ever hear this phrase because the US client culturally thinks it's rude to tell someone that they're having to hold their hand, so they don't say so. So they don't want to make you feel bad. If they do complain, they are very likely to be overly positive and encouraging in the process. So you don't realize how upset they really are. They want to be positive. So why is this? What's going on? Well, they aren't likely to tell you how painful it is to get things done to an acceptable quality working with you because they figure you're doing your best and they don't want to hurt your feelings. It's a big deal here in the US. We don't want to hurt people's feelings. So the US teammates, they remain positive and then they blow up when it all becomes too much for them. And for this reason, a lot of offshore teammates are surprised when they are let go. All right, so let's pause for discussion here. The questions are, have you ever worked with someone who depended heavily on hand-holding? What was it like? Have you ever felt trapped in a hand-holding situation? You knew your hand was being held and you couldn't figure out how to get out of it. How did that turn out? Have you ever been let go or had to let someone go because they required too much hand-holding? Without naming names, tell us about it.
I feel like sometimes I need to get handhold myself when I don't read the client's messages properly. Like I feel there's a cultural layer that I'm not getting, and in that moment, I feel like I need help from someone in the US. So that would be my example.
What do you guys think? I'm not sure that's hand holding. Let's find out.
I think that is not handholding because Miguel is trying to reach someone to help with something that he needs. He's being proactive about it because he maybe feels confused about the message, but he's trying to find a solution to be more proactive about it. I think that handholding will be, for example, that I don't understand something from a client and I don't say it. I just wait for someone to try to explain me without doing anything. Just okay, I think that I got it. I didn't really got it, but I don't say anything. That's it more like a hand-holding situation, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, you're kind of depending on the client to catch you if you fall in that situation. You're not necessarily owning the outcome when you sort of send stuff across and hope, you know. I feel like hand-holding and hope go together really well. If you're sending stuff back and hoping, you're probably in a hand-holding relationship. You should not be hoping. You should know that what you sent back is good enough, or if not, what your questions are and what you need from your client to get it till it's good enough. What I feel is really the key difference is who owns responsibility for the deliverable. And so if you are owning responsibility for the deliverable, but you have perfectly understandable deficiencies in your skill set, that's not really hand-holding to me so much, especially if you know where you're deficient. You exhausted your other options before you reached out to your client for assistance. It's not really hand-holding. Your U.S. customer understands that you're offshores. You have a different background. You have a different native language, probably. You have different experiences. That's understood. It's more about, are you asking me questions that I've already answered? Are you not doing everything we talked about in the first meeting? Did you not take notes? Did you not, because, if a client understands that you don't have context, they'll usually take the time in a meeting to really spell out exactly what you need to do. A lot of times when I hear these complaints about handholding, they'll say, I sent this request over. It had 15 bullet points. 7 of them were just ignored. Like they just completely ignored 7 of my bullet points and sent it back. So I now had to check all the work and then send those 7 bullets back. And then it came back and 3 of them were ignored. So I had to check the work again, tell them the 3 they didn't do, send it back, and finally the 3 got done. But all 15 bullets were there at the beginning. This person could have done the ones they understood and asked questions about the ones they didn't understand. So that's sort of the difference between hand-holding and getting the appropriate assistance that you need. There's nothing wrong with getting the appropriate assistance that you need to do your job. It's hand-holding is when you're just being a bit of a wet noodle and the client just has to push you every step of the way. You're just not putting in your own drive to get this done. That's really what I feel. It's sort of a passive attitude.
Well, just to put it simply, it's annoying. It's annoying for someone that needs hand holding. Just like you were saying, you feel like you're doing more work than if you were doing the work yourself. I had this experience in a previous company. A guy was hired to be my assistant since week 1. I told my boss it's not going to work. Please fire him. He wouldn't ask questions. He would explain things, and you will see his face just going blank. He wouldn't ask questions to get more information, to understand what you were talking about. Like, that in the first week you cannot expect everyone to know everything, but if you have someone asking intelligent questions, they're in a good way. They're going to get there eventually. This person will just stare at me with their mind blank and just don't know what to do. So it's just annoying at the end. I had to do more work than I was actually doing because I was stressed. I had to review everything he was doing.
So your boss expected you to do the work of at least 1.5 people because you had a full-time assistant, right? So now you had to do the work of 1.5 people yourself, plus deal with this guy. Yeah. So you can empathize with our clients who make this complaint. Absolutely. All right, so in services, we often find ourselves with a task and we don't know how to do the job, or the customer doesn't know exactly what they want, right? One or two of these things are both true a lot of the time. What do you guys think? Half the time, right? I don't know exactly how to do my job, A, and B, even if I know how to do this, the client doesn't know what they really want. And at the same time, I'm supposed to not get my hand held. All right, how do we navigate this? This is really tricky, right? And by the way, start by admitting it. You're not helping anyone. If you don't know how to do it, admit it to yourself first and foremost, and admit it to the team, and then we'll move forward and get there. So this does get better with experience, but it never goes away. In fact, I've worked in the US my entire life, and it happens to me on a weekly basis. Absolutely, it happens to me on a weekly basis. I get an email from a client. We need a new policy document. I need a new document that explains the differences between staffing in these different Latin American countries. I don't know what they want. I don't know what level of detail they're expecting. I don't know what's in their head. Okay, I'm in the same boat as you guys. So don't assume it's just because of your situation you don't understand what's going on. And guess what? The client probably doesn't know exactly what they want either. They just know that a lot of times questions come up and they don't have a good way to answer them. And if we could prepare something for them to use for that, that would be helpful. So this is normal. Watch the Imposter Syndrome. It's normal to not know how to do your job in technical services because the work is changing all the time and every situation is different. If you want to succeed on US teams, you need to be able to navigate this very common situation without overly frustrating your client or overworking yourself. So your goals in priority order are, first of all, deliver what your customer actually wants on time. That's your number one goal in these situations. And by the way, that's not what the customer thinks they want necessarily. It's what the customer actually wants, which means it's something that they will actually take and use, and it will solve a real problem for them. Don't waste your customer's time and energy. This doesn't mean you won't use any of their time and energy. I said don't waste their time and energy. You can use their time and energy. In fact, you'll have to. The question you should always ask yourself is, am I wasting their time and energy? Which means, did I really need to ask this question? Or am I really asking the most useful question? This means you need to be strategic about how you use their time and energy. Lastly, you don't want to waste your own time. Wasting your own time leads to having to comp time or you working unlogged hours. Or it means you don't have the energy for your other duties and overall performance lags. So one way to get out of this hand-holding trap is just to be heroic. All right, I'm just going to work and work and work at this so hard, and I'm going to put in 20 hours on this task. Okay, that doesn't work, because even if you don't clock that time, it still takes your energy, and people just, they don't understand why you can't get as much work done every week, because they don't know that you're actually secretly putting in way more time and effort than they think. So that's not a solution either, guys. We all have that. We all have the occasional week where we have to do that. But as a strategy, long term, no. You've got to actually do it in the time allotted. All right, so what's the answer to this conundrum? Drafts. The answer is drafts. Who knows what a draft is?
Like something unfinished?
Yes. And we know it's unfinished, and we know in what ways it's unfinished. The draft is an intentional part of the process of delivering the work. So sometimes people try to be tricky, and they send over work, and the client says, this is not at all what I need. And they say, well, it was just a draft. I just wanted feedback. Okay, that's cheating. You needed to call it a draft when you sent it over if it was a draft. You can't hope that it's done, and then when the client starts to complain, try to recover. Well, I didn't mean it was done. That doesn't work. It's a strategic draft. You're strategically saying, I need this specific feedback. I've taken the work to this specific point, and now I need you to tell me if I'm on the right track, and I have the following questions. That's a draft. All right, so I have a list here of contrasting differences between hand-holding and drafts on the Google Doc. So we'll start with hand-holding. With hand-holding, the customer has to pull the proper quality of work from the teammate. If the customer does nothing, the teammate does nothing. The teammate's not going to do anything unless the customer says this is not good enough. The customer's trade-off of effort to get what they need via the teammate is not less or not much less than the work to do it themselves. That, again, is we talked about that before, but that is hand-holding. With handholding, the work is usually unusable. Client either starts over and explains again or sends it back with a ton of markup on the work. This took the client a lot of time and energy beyond the initial handoff. Client will often just do the task themselves at this point. All right, so now let's do the list of drafts. Teammate takes ownership of the delivery of a job well done. I own this task. It is my job to get this done well, and I need to make sure it was done well before I move on. Teammate tries other options before asking the client what to do. Who else can I ask? Do I have a friend, a mentor? Is there an online group I can post this question in? With drafts, the teammate takes very careful notes before the handoff meeting and is prepared with smart questions. When you're working in a drafts mode, when you meet with a client, you're going to come prepared with smart questions. Ask the questions proactively. This not only will help you to deliver work that's more acceptable, but it also shows the client that you're not asking to have your hand held, but instead you've really thought about this, and the questions you're asking are really questions that you could get answered nowhere else. You really need them to answer them. That's great. You need to prepare your questions. If you are trying to make them up on the fly, they will probably not be smart questions. Teammate might find examples of similar work on the internet and send them to the client to verify this is the sort of thing they need. That's an example of a draft. You send something someone else made or something you did earlier and say, hey, is this close to what you want? Teammate completes the draft a day before the deadline so they can review it again with fresh eyes before sending it. I do this every time. I don't send out anything to a client that I haven't let sit for 24 hours, and then I review it before I send it. And almost every time I find a typo or an error or something like that. This is not about being offshores, okay? You always should look at work with fresh eyes before you deliver it. Teammate checks the draft against any style guides, documentation, or work examples the company may have. And if the company doesn't have these things, maybe you need to suggest they get some or even help them develop them. Because if they want to be successful hiring nearshore teammates, they've got to have some basic documentation. So there's a couple of ways to do a draft. One way is you develop a portion of the work to full quality. So if it's a 9-page brochure, you do just 1 page of the brochure, but you do it completely polished. You send that to the client. You say, hey, I've completed the first page. Could you give me notes before I do the rest? That way, the client has an opportunity to tell you where you may or may not be off track, and you don't waste all your effort, because we're trying to save you effort as well as the client in doing it. You might send the draft to other people besides your client to look at it before you send it to the client. Maybe you can make a buddy in your organization where you review each other's work. When you send drafts, you need to A, specify it's a draft. Okay, I can't tell you how many times this is missed. So when I get something sent to me that I asked for and it's obviously incomplete and there's just no note, and I look at it, okay, it's obviously not done. And so I'm now supposed to study this thing and go back through my own meeting notes I had with you and document everything I told you to do that you didn't do and send it back to you. That's the expectation. So instead, if you send it to me and you say, this is a draft, here's what I know is done, and I'd like you to review. Here's what I know is not done, I'd like you to not look at. And here's my super intelligent questions about how to finish this project so I really understand what to do next. If the project does wind up turning into hand-holding, the teammate is apologetic and asks the client for ideas of how things could have gone better next time. At least own it. Tell the client, hey, I know this isn't acceptable. I know that long-term, this isn't going to work the way it's going. But I'm committed to fixing it. That'll go a long way with your US client. Okay, they want it to work. They want you to work out. They really do. They want you to be successful. They want you to really provide lift on their team. They didn't hire you for no reason. They hired you because they really needed help. And they probably really like you, is the truth. It's just the fact is you're not helping. So at least acknowledge that. When I'm a manager in the US, I feel really helpless when it's obviously not working and my teammate seems just oblivious to that fact. So again, the most important thing when sending drafts to the client is clarifying that you understand it's not done or acceptable and specify that you know what you still need to do. This changes the psychology of the interaction. So on the one hand, you're sending over work that's obviously incomplete and saying nothing. And on the other hand, you're sending over the exact same incomplete work, but you say, I know this isn't done. I know what's not done. Here's my questions. Now, in both cases, you've sent the exact same work, but the experience of the client, the psychology of the interaction is totally different in both cases. In the former experience, the client has all kinds of questions. Does this person even have eyes? Do they even see why would they send me this without any, whereas and then when they send that, you're like, oh, this person's really trying. They took my feedback as far as they could. I can see the type of coaching I could give them to get this done. It's just a completely different interaction and experience for your client. I regularly see offshores teammates send incomplete or unacceptable work to clients without any note at all. They just send it. Are they hoping the client will just accept it? The client feels like you don't have any idea what's going on in these situations. They think the training you is hopeless. When confronted, the teammate often says, I knew it wasn't done, but I took it as far as I could. Okay, well, you just wasted a lot of my time without saying that up front. So in other words, you will have to send over incomplete or unacceptable work. The key to success is in how you send over incomplete or unacceptable work. Specify what you know you still need to do. Specify exactly how you are stuck and tell your client specifically the help you need. Use your client to assist you as your last option, not your first. Bottom line. The difference between hand-holding and drafts is mindset. It's all about how you're looking at the work. In the proper mindset, the task is your job. Your task is your job. You are responsible for delivering this work. You must deliver it at the proper quality level on time. You take responsibility and are very respectful of your client's time. You understand that your client putting time into you to do your job is a favor to you from the client. They are taking time out of their very busy day to help you. If you do this, your clients will find you easy to work with. All right, so more tips. You don't ask questions that were already answered because you took good meeting notes. You don't ask questions or for examples that can easily be found on Google. You don't ask vague questions. You ask specific, clear questions so the client doesn't have to spend a lot of time figuring out what you are asking or how to help. Tell the client how to help you specifically and give them options. I hope you found this content helpful, and I hope that you'll be able to better identify hand-holding when it happens when you're working with your U.S. clients. We hope you'll be able to move past hand-holding into a truly mutually beneficial relationship with your clients as quickly as possible. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time.